Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the e-invoicing online seminar organized by South Indian Congo Business Network, SIGBA Malaysia, in collaboration with NK Associates and Go Digital Production. So before we start the session, let me introduce our speaker, without further ado, Mr. K. Krishnan, who has 30 years experience in business advisory, taxation, and also in the corporate auditing, who is based in Puchong and has been working along with SMEs for 30 years now. So he has been, we done one program in Tamil earlier, about 2 weeks ago, and upon the demand, we created one more program today in English, right? So I hope every one of you who have already been having your business, it could be sole proprietorship like enterprise or Santiam Bahad company, or you have a LLP, it's good that you need to know about this e-invoicing implementation, which is the digital transaction process enabled by LHDN Malaysia. And Mr. Krishnan will going to actually give us the entire spectrum of what is e-invoicing is all about and how are we going to actually get ready ourselves regardless of size of the business that we are with. So without further ado, I would like to actually invite Mr. Krishnan. The stage is yours, sir.
Thank you, Bhavana, for your wonderful introduction. And yeah, your company is Go Digital. That's the way to move forward, you know. And obviously, this e-invoice is going to accelerate that further, you know. Thank you to all joining our session, which is organized by our association, South Indian Congo Business Association, SIGBA in short, you know. And as I mentioned just now, like it or not, when the law is passed by the government, everybody has to comply with it, you know, unless otherwise the law been revised or amended, you know. And this e-invoicing been brought up by the government a couple of years back, 2-3 years back, and last budget it was introduced table and a finance bill was passed. When the finance bills are passed, means in the finance bills normally contain various amendments to different act, you know, whether it's Income Tax Act or Service Tax Act and whatnot. And these particular amendments were done to the Income Tax Act, Section 83, meaning to say it's come under the jurisdictions of the Inland Revenue Board of Malaysia. Unlike GST was come under the jurisdiction of the Customs Malaysia, Royal Customs Malaysia, whereas the e-invoicing is under the our Income Tax Department, which is they are the authority to implement and ensure everything goes well. And they have set up a team. Okay. And as everybody aware or may not aware the significance of this e-invoicing, and bear in mind, this got nothing to do with taxes. You know, it's not additional taxes or additional burden to anyone, whereby they're going to pay extra taxes. It's more for administrative process now. If you're doing a conventional invoicing, now you're going to do that in a same thing in a digital format, which you're going to, I will take you through, you know. And yes, and a way to move forward is digitalize your business, because that's the first steps towards the e-invoicing, you know, whether you're applying or using your software yourself, your own software, or provide the platform provided by the Inland Revenue Board, through the portal, web-based portal, or the application, mobile application, which they are working on it. It's not released to the public yet, but obviously I believe it will be available by the 1st of August. Okay, with that, dive into the what we are going to cover for the day. I got 45 minutes session with a 15 minutes Q&A. Okay, so with that, let me share the slides for the day. I hope everybody have a view of my slides now.
Yes, sir. We can see the slides.
You can see the first. Okay, let me take you all through what is e-invoicing entail, and what we need to know in order to ensure that we are not on the wrong side of the law by the time, if you need to comply with. Yeah. If you let me look through the how this invoicing have evolved over the time. If we let me get to point. Yeah, my laser pointer. If we, I mean, this invoice, the word invoice is nothing alien to us. I think everybody know this word. It's not a difficult word to understand. Sometimes we also call it as a bill. Bill or invoice is a common word used. And for the very small transaction, normally they don't raise the invoice or bill. Normally they raise a receipt, which is mainly for small transactions, like when you go to parking, you collect a receipt, or toll, you collect a receipt, which would be as good as a commercial document to record the transaction for the income of the seller and expenses for the buyer. Traditionally, if you look at it, if you look at my pointer, those days, normally there will be what you call pre-printed invoices by the stationery shops or printers, and that invoices normally is signed and with the chop of the company or rubber stamp on it, we send it to the customer. And most of the time, these invoices can be 3 copies with the carbon copies. The first copy given to the customer. The second copy normally given, we keep it in our particular file, invoice file, and the last copy left it in the book itself, so that in the events of anything, we still can go back to the book and find the invoice, the same number. And the file is an invoice file, and the customer given the original. And more, of course, the later part of this invoicing, we have a carbonized copy. You don't put a carbon paper and print it out, you see. And the posting in the accounting is to be debit receivable and credit to the income. And we post it, and in the supplier side, or rather, sorry, customer side, it'll be account payable and expenses for them. So in the conventional invoices, there's always involved a posting of these invoices or courier of these invoices. Those days, we don't have an email. And thereafter the email came in, then we scan the same invoice, we send it to them. Or the invoice are given to the customer upon delivery of the goods or the services, by the salesman and whatnot, is it? And from here, it further evolved into the soft copy of the invoices, meaning instead of using a pre-printed invoices, our computer generate our own invoices, particularly using the computer softwares, accounting software, where I can generate its own invoices, almost like on the letter A, And instead of sending a physical invoices, we send normally through the email itself, the attachment, the PDF copy. And of course, that also evolved into this soft copy into no signature required, where most of the invoices, they put it as a no signature required, meaning to say you need to sign on it, and no rubber stamp involved. You just print it out and send it to them. And when the goods are delivered to the customers, normally they acknowledge the DO. DO is the delivery of the goods, confirming the goods being received. And follow with that, we raise the invoices. Whereas for the service sectors, you may have a timesheet or any other documents to sign off the service being performed, and which is good to raise the invoices. And this, when the COVID pandemic came in, in year 2020 and whatnot, this become a norm, meaning sending the digital document in the form of PDF copy become a norm, and everybody accept it. They don't even ask for the original, which I would say this pandemic have accelerated the implementation or rather usage of the PDF copies. So much so that even when you bought those days, they used to come do the field audit at the location, at the client's tax-based location, and they change it to almost 100% desk audit, whereby they only request the document through the email. Email means it's a soft copies, the PDF copies, whether it's a ledger or invoices or anything. And they do other substantive tests to see whether these expenses are legitimate, not like a touch and feel to see whether this invoice itself original, which is used to be those days. They see whether the original is original invoices or not original invoices. Now we are going one more level above, which is e-invoice. E-invoice is almost like a PDF copy, system generated document. But now the difference between the earlier practice and now is that this digital invoice, the relevant information from the digital invoice or the invoice generated by the system will be shared to the income tax database on a real-time basis, particularly for the transaction-based e-invoice, almost real-time, meaning every second when you raise these invoices, they will know that this transaction has taken place. Similar like when you transfer the bank, any transaction with a bank, whether receiving the money or sending the money through the bank, using the online banking system, the bank will know immediately the transaction that be done or conducted by the account holder. Who is the maker, who is the checker and whatnot. So the similar patient, this is how this e-invoicing is working, If you look at this e-invoice compared to conventional invoices, it is actually a digital representation. We will go into that digital representation between the supplier and the buyer. In the GST era, we used to use the word called supply, and the GST revolving within this word supply, whether the supply is what they call taxable supply, or exempt or zero rated, whereas in the e-invoice implementation, there's no word supply. It is the supplier and the buyer, or rather we can say the seller and the buyer. But again, they don't use the seller, but they use a supplier because the supplier is beyond a seller. You will know that later. So that's the reason why the word chosen is a supplier and not the seller, And it contains the same information as what we already have, but with more things to add on, in order to mapping the transactions between the supplier and the buyer. So not only what you already have it, you have to have more. The conventional invoices can be in the form of PDF, JPEG, DOC doc, or PNG. And normally, as I said just now, it's very common to email these documents. So emailing this document to the customer is not, bear in mind, it is not e-invoice. It may be electronically transmitted, no doubt about it. It is electronically transmitted, no doubt about it. But it is not the e-invoice for the purpose of Income Tax Act. Because the e-invoice format is XML or JSON format, actually, which is more of a machine-readable format. our common people wouldn't know because there's so many codes and lines there, which is extracted from your document. If we look at it, it's something like this: our conventional invoices. Then we have the PDF copy, no signature, nothing. Whereas this is carbonized, multiple copy here. And this is what the e-invoice format, JSON or sorry, it's not a JA, it's actually JSON or XML. It's a spelling mistake. It's a JSON or XML. So this is how the Inland Revenue portal receiving the information, which is transmitted from your software, or if you use their portal, in the income tax portal, to generate the document, this information will be extracted and captured into their database. So this is how our invoice has evolved from those days and to time to come by 1st August. Yeah. Let us look at what is store for us and of course to the authority by implementing this e-invoice. Is it a troublemaker, this particular initiative, or is good for the country and everyone? Of course, everybody anxious to know what is store for me, and I now have to do extra work, no doubt about it. Let's look at it. Yeah, the first is unifying the invoicing process. Is it through this e-invoicing, whether you are just a petty trader or fishmonger in the market or running a mini market or transport business, MSMEs, we call micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, or your large companies, conglomerate, government agency. I won't say government agency, government linked companies or listed companies. Everybody follow the same format, unified invoicing process. So that make the data mapping much easier for everyone, of course, the government, and also reduce the errors, because what you send electronically is what they receive. So the chances of making error is almost either nil or negligible, I would say. So unify invoicing process. Second, it also aligns with the financial reporting, and by digitalized with the industry standards, meaning to say, even the smaller businesses, the way they do business will be incomparable to the larger organizations. This is pretty much for the business sectors. You don't feel small, I'm just doing record keeping, which is not very good and kind of thing. No such thing. What you are doing by adopting this invoicing is almost a similar practice like larger organization. We can feel good about it, And the third is efficient, accurate tax reporting. Since the transactions are all going to be mapped through the e-invoicing, through the various document which encompasses the e-invoice, which I'll cover later, the tax reporting going to be more efficient and obviously accurate or close to accurate, Obviously, income tax going to get more people into the tax net, sooner or later. And the fourth is improve the MSME's record keeping and financial tax reporting. As we all may aware, most of these MSMEs, micro, small, or medium-sized enterprises who don't keep a proper record keeping and do the financial reporting, the submitting the accounts on time, always have a challenge when it comes to getting a financial assistance from the bank, even though the government are pressurizing the banks to, release funds to the MSMEs, small businesses. But too bad, they are not able to meet the requirement of the bank and giving them the proper records, proper accounts to show that they are actually doing such a sales and having such expenses. So that make it difficult for the financial institutions to even give them assistance. So do when they approach the government for the grants and whatnot. It's always they'll ask you, why you need money and how you're doing now. And how you're doing now become very difficult to answer when you don't have a proper records. So obviously this e-invoice is able to help them to capture these informations through this reporting and able to furnish what is necessary, to these authorities or government to make them, easy for them to release these funds, So obviously, number 4 is very, very important. The government also hope that MSME adoption of this e-invoicing will ease their burden to get the financing. Yeah. So having this, let's see what is the timeline we are looking at it, As I mentioned, this is not just last year matter. It was, brought up by the government a couple of years back. I think it's about 3 years back. At that time, the proposal was, the guide at that time, to start in June this year, and the last batch to join is 1st January 2027. By then, I think government has decided otherwise. In the last budget, they have brought it early. The starting period was from June this year to brought it, in fact, move forward to 1st August. But the last batch compliance was brought it early from January to July next year, 25, which means between now we are in May, and next year, July is not too far for everyone to comply with. Yeah. And who need to comply with based on their turnover. There's no exemption here. Sooner or later, everybody have to comply with it. Not like a GST, whereby anyone having a revenue or taxable supply of less than 500,000 are not required to comply. They can voluntarily comply, but they are not required to comply with the GST. But then for the e-invoice, no such thing, everyone has to comply with it. So for the 1st August, those company or businesses having 100 million over turnover, they have to comply with it. From 1st January, those having above 25 million, and 1st July is everyone, which is not too far from now, by the time we realize nowadays, time passes very fast. And how we determine this threshold of 100 million or 25 million? If it's a company that been audited, if you have audited financial statements, we look at 2022 numbers, and that will be the basis or to determine whether that particular company need to comply with it by 1st August or 1st January. But if the entity is not subject to audit for whatsoever reason, then it is based on the tax reporting for 2022. Whatever the numbers they disclosed in 2022, that will be taken as the basis for to determine the 100 million or 25 million. In case there's a change of accounting period in 2022, because Malaysia allow the companies, particularly the companies, not a sole proprietors or partnership, they cannot change their year end, but the companies can change the year end. So in the case they have changed the year end in 2022, then we have to take that period and divide by the period covered to get the average and times by 12. So that is prorated for the 12 months. So that will be the basis. Whereas those new businesses started in 23, then whether even in 23 they are meeting the threshold, let's say they start the business in January 23, and by August they already crossed the 100 million, they can choose to start the e-invoicing from July 25, unless they want to go for early compliance. But otherwise, even they cross the 100 million or 25 million, they can still implement the e-invoicing from 1st July 25. This is only for the new companies, for new businesses started from 1st January 23 onwards, Scenarios and types of e-invoices. So this is where a little bit more complicated compared to tax invoice in the GST era. In the GST era, we call tax invoice. Here we call e-invoice. E-invoice because they electronically transmitted information to the Inland Revenue Board, as I mentioned. I think So if we look at the e-invoicing implementation or the requirement, it is only for the proof of income, but also for the proof of expenses. So that's why we make it a bit difficult. A little bit more complicated, because Even for the certain expenses, you're also required to issue the e-invoice. We will go into that later, So e-invoice doesn't mean only for the income you earn, but also certain expenses which you are going to capture, okay? So what are the type of the e-invoices? So e-invoice doesn't mean that only invoice, which is traditionally we call it, but in this legislation, e-invoice also includes the credit note, debit note, and refund note. I think invoice is not the issue everybody aware. In order for you to, when you when you earn the income, you raise the invoice as a proof of earning income, and we invoice our customer to collect money. Yeah, that is invoice for to record it revenue. When the reduction in the revenue for whatever reason, like a discount given and whatnot, or goods returned, then instead of, we can't go and alter the invoice, we normally issue the credit note, which is actually to reduce the amount to be paid by the customer and also reduce the revenue. So that is the credit note. Debit note is if there's additional charges in relation to the invoice, like we missed out certain charges, like a transport cost or whatsoever, then we raise the debit note, which actually increase the revenue or sometimes also the recovery of the cost. So these are very common document: invoice, credit note, and debit note. There's a new document been introduced, we call refund note. This is something new in this e-invoicing. Refund note is the note where the business has to issue when they refund money to their customer, assuming that the customer has paid you the advance for whatever reason the transaction didn't take place, and you're going to refund the money. The refund note must be issued to document that refund. So this is something extra compared to our normal conventional accounting document, which is invoice, credit note, and debit note. So obviously, this is something new and important to take note. Possibly, this is brought in order to reconcile in a bigger perspective the cash flow or cash reconciliation of the organization. Okay. So who are those that need to comply with? Who are the people? So any legislation, there'll be always the party involved who's supposed to comply with it, So those who are not comply with it, either they'll be technically exempted or specifically will be mentioned that they are not required to comply with, So in GST era, if you all remember, everybody is required to comply unless otherwise they've been exempted, But here they have stated who are those required to comply with. Associations, body or person means including companies and whatnot, Then we have a branch office, even a branch, a company's branch in various locations within Malaysia also can do the e-invoice reporting. Trusts, cooperatives, LLPs, partnership, real estate investments, regional office, rep office, trust body, unit trust. So almost everything is there. And obviously, the body of person cover many other areas, including an individual. So bear in mind, e-invoice doesn't mean I must have a registered entity only I need to comply with, not necessarily. E-invoice may also require it. Even you don't have any registered entity, you're operating under your own name. Let's say somebody baking a cake and she's selling, that cake from home and probably delivered by these Lala Move, we have dispatch companies, they transport it out. And even though she do it from a kitchen and it's not hobby, it's not a hobby where she do the cake and give it to her friends, but she put it in the Facebook or Instagram, or, and all the social media and sell it. And if regarded as a business, even she do it under own name, using her own personal account, she need to comply with it. The person need to comply with it, okay? So it's not necessarily, you can say, since I didn't register my business, so I'm not required to. And who are those being exempted from issuing the e-invoice? Yes, rulers, former rulers, government, either the state government or federal government government authorities, local authorities like a town council and so on, statutory bodies like companies, commissions, income tax board, IRB, Inland Revenue Board, and so on. It could be also port authorities and so on. Consular office. Let's say you go and renew your visa, and the visa being issued by the diplomatic office, they are not required to comply with the invoice. Individuals not doing a business, meaning, let's say you are renting the business renting a shop house or office lot from the individual, and that individual person is not carrying out the business per se, then he is not required to issue an invoice. Individual not doing a business are not required to issue an invoice. So it's always there's a catch here. What constitutes doing a business? It's not easy to answer whether you're doing a business or not, particularly if you are doing continuous transactions and regular transactions with a profit-seeking motive. Then you may regard it as doing a business, because it's covered under the badges of trade. There are many case laws and whatnot as a guidance to determine whether the person is doing a business. It's $1 million question. You can always search and find out, how to determine whether you're doing a business. Okay. Type of transactions covered under the e-invoice, if we take it, B2B is B2B means business to business. The other one is a B2G. B2B is a business means like let's say you are selling to another business, take that your product or your services input for them, and they may also sell it to another business or end consumer. So your sale is actually an input to another business. That's a B2B. The other one, B2G, where government purchase your goods or services. That's a B2G. The third one is a B2 consumers, B2C. B2B, B2G, and B2C. Business to consumer. That means the consumer don't go and resell again. They consume it, And of course, the issue is whether they're claiming that expenditure for the tax or not. That's another matter. But they consume, they don't go and resell it. So that's what we call B2C. So for the B2B and B2G, we need to raise a transactional e-invoicing, meaning to say every invoice, every sale, the sales transaction must, or even for the certain expenses transaction, must be validated by the Inland Revenue through their portal, validated each and every transactions. Where the B2C, not every transaction, because it's very inconvenient, for the consumers to wait to collect the invoice, or rather the business to raise the invoice. So the government come up with a consolidated invoice, meaning to say you are not required to raise the individual invoices to your customers. Like in a restaurant, you go and eat, they raise a bill, and the receipt is enough, and you only need to, the business only required to submit the document once a month through the consolidated invoice. That means in a year, they only have to submit 12 documents, which is by the 7th of the following month. Yeah, we will go into that later. That's how it works. By then, the issue here is not submitting once a month. The issue here is it must contain the details of every transaction by the receipt numbers. So that is the issue. You can't submit, this is my sales for 50,000 a month or 45,000 a month as a single transaction. Yeah. So transaction not required e-invoicing, meaning these are the transaction happens in your business, but you are not required to raise an invoice. Employment income, pension, alimony, distribution of dividends, that not required under 108 tax credit. 108 tax credit is actually when they have a two-tier tax system, and now we have a single tier whereby no deduction required for 108 credit, a zakat or scholarship. So all these expenses or payment are not required to issue e-invoice. Why that expenses comes in? Because there are requirements for self-raised invoice. We'll look at it later, then you know why these expenses are not required. There are certain industry where they won't raise individual invoices to you even currently. They normally issue a statement end of the month. So knowing the difficulties of the single transaction e-invoicing, the government allow those organizations to raise or rather consider the statement as a e-invoice. For example, if we take the monthly telephone bill, which is coming in the form of a statement. Your bank statement, not only containing your the funds you receive for your payout, but also the bank charges or interest and whatnot. And those charges or interest, which actually income for the bank, they are not required to raise e-invoice for each and every transaction. They can just do that through the statement. So the statement is regarded as the e-invoice once a month to the consumers. So do for the stockbroking firms and whatnot. Yeah. So let's look into a little bit detail on the B2C transactions. As I said just now, generally the B2C transactions, you can submit a consolidated invoices. That's well and good. By then, there are certain transactions government require them to still issue the e-invoicing, meaning to say transactional based documentation. These sectors, even though they are selling to the end consumer, they are still required to comply with the e-invoicing process for the validation. Sale of automotives, flight tickets, private charters of planes. When you purchase a jewelries, construction materials, those winning, won in the betting games, they are required to, or the payer, the company which is paying them, will raise the self-raised invoice. Self-raised invoice means the payer will raise the invoice in the name of the recipient. Payments to the agents, dealers, and distributors, like this is very common. People to act as an agent for the properties, they help them to sell the properties. If they are company, the company will raise an invoice in the name of the agent, even though the agent is not doing a business. If the agent don't raise the e-invoice, the company will raise the e-invoice in the name of the agent. Through that, the Inland Revenue Board or the government know how much the agents earn, this individual earns. So these are the type of transactions by the businesses where required transactional e-invoice, not a consolidated e-invoice. Because in a consolidated invoice, there's no bias information, whereas the transactional-based invoices, there's a bias information. Their tax numbers, their NRIC, any identification numbers, and of course, if they are given a phone numbers and whatnot. So what is self-bill invoice? Self-bill invoice is what I mentioned just now, among others. In this situation, just now when I talk about the employment income and so on, all those are not expenses, but it's not covered under self-bill invoices. By then, there are other expenses which is listed below are required to be issue self-bill invoices. So this is where we are talking about even the expenses required e-invoice, which I mentioned just now, only not for the income, but also expenses. So this comes under the self-bill invoice. This self-bill invoice is not actually new in Malaysia. If we look at during the GST era, if they buy from particularly the farmers, the buyer is supposed to raise a self-raised invoice in the name of the farmer, so that the farmer can claim the input tax on their fertilizers and whatnot, which is subject to the GST. So the farmer can use the self-raised invoice by the wholesalers or purchaser, and they can claim the input tax credit in the GST era. So same concept here. So now in this case, it's not the buyer, the whoever paying for it, they are required to raise the self-bill invoice. Of course, also the consumer buyer. Like when you buy from the foreign supplier, when the business buy from the foreign supplier, and this foreign supplier is not in our e-invoice ecosystem, they won't log into our e-invoice ecosystem or portal to transmit those information. So the business are required to raise the invoice themselves in the name of the buyer, in the name of supplier. Sorry. Payments to agent, I already mentioned just now. Employee perquisite. Employee perquisite are claims by the employee. Something like if they're given a golf membership or membership in the gym, or their traveling claims and whatnot, staff claims, all these are required as self-raised invoice. I think that traditionally nowadays, the staff just submit a claim form, they attach the documents, they claim informations, and we make the payment. Unlike only for the salary, you raise the pay slips. And we do the year-end reporting to the EA form, issued to the employee, and E form to the unit majikan, the employer unit, which is due by this month, extended period in Malaysia, for Malaysia, on the employee informations and the remuneration by them. By then, under the e-invoice compliance requirement, for other than the salary, any claims by the employee, the company are required to raise the e-invoice in the name of the employee. Acquisition of goods or services from individual taxpayer not conducting a business. As I mentioned just now, let's say you rent a building from the owner, which is not carrying on the business. The business are required, you are required to raise the invoice in the name of the owner, the landlord. So in your invoice, you will state is identification number or is TIN number, tax identification number, and that will be synced with the income tax data. So with that, Inland Revenue Board know who is this landlord which is renting it to you, because nowadays that is not in the system. PR for letting, I already mentioned. Also the e-commerce. E-commerce are the platform which connecting the buyer and seller, and they have to also issue these invoices on the, of course, to the buyer is not the issue, their customer, who is the seller, because the seller might be upload the item they're selling and they don't give the invoice. So in this case, the e-commerce platform provider has to raise the e-invoice in the name of the seller. Okay. These are just on a quick look at it. These are the expenses, employee pecuniary liabilities like club membership, gym, and professional fees and whatnot, paid by the employer, are required to be, which is now just a claim sheet. But moving forward, the company or the business required to issue a invoice. But this invoice is not to capture the income, but to capture the expenses of the company. Same like earlier I mentioned, when there's a foreign suppliers, you are required to issue the self-raised invoice, self-billed invoice in the name of the supplier. Yeah. So this is where it makes a little bit more complicated compared to our even GST for that matter, because GST only involving a tax invoice, and it doesn't talk about the expenses issue. So overview workflow of the e-invoice mechanism. If you look at it, Inland Revenue Board have a My Invoice portal, but it is not ready for the public viewing yet. At the moment, if you go there, I think now you only have not a My Invoice portal. There is a e-invoice micro website in the income tax portal for the various guides only. Only the micro website in the income tax portal itself, but not a My Invoice portal. Now, My Invoice portal, they're only making available for those software companies doing the testing in their sandbox environment at this junction, but it will be accessible to all by 1st August, obviously. And those who are not using the software, if they are not using the software, they can use the My Invoice portal to raise the e-invoices. That's what the government said. It can be the browser-based portal, or they're also looking at releasing a mobile application. But those, of course, obviously, this more for the less transaction, less number of transactions. If you have many transactions, obviously, It is not practical. So then they must have their own system, either it's an ERP system or accounting system, which integrated with the Inland Revenue Board's My Invoice portal through the API. So the API will act as an interface between the accounting software and the Inland Revenue Board's My Invoice portal. So when you punch in the number in your accounting software and you type send, it will immediately, in the fraction of a second, sync the data with the My Invoice portal, and you get a notification they've been validated. Unless the data is not matching, they may, like the tax number is not matching with the business number, registration number, then you may reject for you to amend it. So API is the way move forward for businesses which have a large number of transactions, not a large value of transaction, large number of transactions. If in a year you're raising only 2 invoices and that 2 invoices each make up of, let's say, 1 million, you can just use the My Invoice portal and do it. You don't need any accounting software, you know. For the same 2 million value of transaction, if you are raising, let's say, 5,000 transactions, obviously using a My Invoice portal may be a bit challenging, you know, but yet to be seen. Yeah. So if you look at the flow, is the supplier will transmit the, you know, the transaction, the e-invoice to the My Invoice portal, and after validate, it will return to the supplier. You know, it will validate. My Invoice portal validate, and they'll send a notification to the supplier that been validated. So once the notification been received by the supplier, that notifications will contain the virtual invoice, which have the unique identifier number and the QR code embedded on the virtual invoice. And that PDF copy can be shared to the buyer. And the buyer can take that and perform their normal transactions, you know, posting to their payable and the expenses account, you know, but it don't sync automatically in the buyer's account unless they are both under the PayPal environment. PayPal environment is another system. If both are under the PayPal environment, then the supplier's information will be, the transaction information will automatically map to the buyer portal. But at this junction, we are only looking at whereby upon supplier receiving the notification, they share the invoice like what we are doing now to the supplier. And yeah, if there any mistake in the invoices, they can validate and rectify it within in fact, they can rectify within 72 hours. Failing which, you require to issue the credit note to amend it, actually, you know. And this is how the transactional e-invoice look like, with all the relevant information, required information, and the QR code embedded, and the unique identifier number. Yeah. So consolidated invoice in similar fashion is just that the flow is almost the same. You know, you have to submit only once a month by the 7th of the following month. Yeah. And this is how it look like. As I mentioned, there's a receipt, serial number must be there, and amount. So there's a receipt, serial number need to appear. It's not just one block amount. Yeah, that's what makes things a bit difficult for the retailers or smaller businesses, because they must have system to issue the receipt. Yeah. Required data field, primarily we look at it, there's a name, address, contact number, email. I think this is all common, 1 to 4. But now what is additional required in your invoice now is the TIN number, tax identification number, or the business registration, NRIC or passport number, and the SST number, if there's applicable. SST number, or even for those who are under the, what they call tourism tax, their number as well as to appear. Yeah. This is just a primary, but if you look at it, there are actually 55 standardized data field required. But depend on the complexity of the business and whether you are involving export, import. There are data field which is mandatory. There are also data field which is optional, you know. So this is where the implementation time is very important to collect all the relevant data to input into your system. So this is a standard 55 data field, and there's also additional 12 data field for the if you're involving with the foreign suppliers or customers, which is annexed to the invoices, particularly containing the custom documents. Yeah. So this even complicate the thing further, but then That's the way to move forward. Digital signature is required to record who actually issuing the invoices. So all the taxpayers or businesses required to obtain the digital signatures embed into the system, which will be a one-time exercise, I believe, and it will be automatically embedded to the document. Yeah. Legal provision and guides, as I mentioned, the main section involved here is section 82, which has been inserted now to cover the e-invoicing requirements. Yeah. Non-compliance, yeah, this is where the scary part of it, unlike our income tax currently, if underpaid or whatnot, normally the penalty is on the totality. If your tax are underpaid and they charge you a penalty, the income tax normally charge about 35% or 45 or 15 on the total amount, plus the tax to be paid, in the total amount. Whereas, here, I think this is where the people, is still not really taking it very seriously. Maybe they don't know about the impact of these penalties, because here we are talking about transactional, issue of transition. Transactional issues here. That means every transaction, you make any mistake in your transaction, and each transaction may subject to penalty of 200 to 20,000. So you can imagine in the business how many transactions you will do when come to buying or selling or incurring many expenses. So you have 10,000 transactions in your company for a year. If any of these transactions does not comply with the e-invoicing, and that particular transaction can subject to penalty of anything between 200 to 20,000. So you can imagine if a company missed out, assuming under transaction not comply with, and that under transaction even is subject to only 200 ringgit minimum penalty. So you can imagine it's almost 20,000 penalty. So which is too much to bad. So this is where I think many people not aware that penalty is by transaction, not by totality, unless Inland Revenue is so kind, because at the beginning, some of them for offense, but maybe they just raise a simple penalty at the beginning. But the way to move forward, we cannot take it lightly, yeah. And not only that, for the buyer, if you're buying from anyone which don't comply with the e-invoice, they don't raise the e-invoice, you cannot claim that expenses, cannot use that bill to claim the expenses. So, which meaning to say you ended up paying more taxes for not able to claim the expenses. So the bill which you collected from the supplier who have not validated his invoice through the invoice portal, my invoice portal, cannot be claimed. So that's again, that will make that everybody, or rather everybody, need to comply with the invoicing. Yeah. There are many guides available in the micro website of the Inland Revenue Board, and they keep updating it. Please feel free to go and download, and you can take your time to read it. Yeah. So now having that, the guidelines are quite detailed actually. There's a general guideline as well as specific guideline, industry guideline. By then it's a bit technical in certain area, but most of the area are more for talk about the flows, because it's more like a commercial matter rather than a tax matter. Yeah, what's next? So yeah, now preparing this, whether you got now 2 months or 3 months to August, or 6-7 months to the January, or you have a 1 year to July, depend on your size and complexity of your business. Yeah. So obviously, most important to have people. Just a couple of days, I have a session in one of the company called me for the training, which involved with palm oil sectors. And yes, after going through the thing, immediately they decided to set up a team in the organization, because they have people dealing with the documentation as well as finance there. So then they realized the importance of the e-invoicing, and somehow they have to meet the requirement by August, just 2 months late, or from now. So very important, the people in organization must understand the severity of the issues involved, and depend on the size of the organization, the sooner you set up the team to look at it, it's better. But not only team, also the technology, your software compliance and compatibility with the e-invoicing regime. At the moment, not many software, even though they're working on it, they're not really released the full module for testing or used by the public. But if a larger organizations, they already engaging the service providers on the this compliance requirement, particularly the data field, whether those data field are matching the requirements or not, And the third is the process. The life is not going to be the same. That's what the process is all about. Life is not going to be the same. Because you are required to obtain the relevant information and embed that into your AR or AP, account payable, account receivable, and when you raise the document, the e-invoicing, whether for the income, invoice for the income, or credit note or debit note or refund note, you have the relevant information captured and been validated. Yeah.
So I've been here,
So
we have been getting
this is a way to move forward,
questions
and
to
life
the
is not
direct
going to be the
message to
same.
me. So
Moving
participants,
forward,
please share the
particularly in
questions
relation to the
in
business
the chat
processes
so
from
that
1st July
speaker can
next year,
able to see that.
and for some from
Nevertheless,
1st
sir,
August
I
itself
do
from
have a
this
few
year.
questions has been sent
So
over
with
to
that,
me directly.
thank you to everyone being
like
with
to
us.
see-
If you can relate that question, would be good for me. Buna,
I will
for
read out
your
to you. So the
for
first-
moderating these events.
The first
and
question is from Surya.
with that, hand it over
What's
to
the
Buna. If there's any
impact of an
questions,
individual
probably we can
with
take
the
five
IRB?
for 5 questions. Yep. Now, the impact of the individual to IRB is subject to whether they're doing a business or not. So,
Okay.
if you're not doing a business, then you're not really impacted by this because there's no additional tax per se where you're going to fork out more. And if this been synchronized later, all the mapping and done for the individual for their tax reporting, possibly they are not required to capture this in tax reporting because the e-invoicing also map this like insurance, for example. So when they're filling up the income tax form, possibly they be populated the data there, or they buy the computer from a particular shop, and let's say they pay 3,000 and the lifestyle relief is 2,500. Probably by then, when the invoicing is already advanced to a certain level, and that particular information will map to his income tax database. So possibly moving forward, it will be more of for the individual, they need to submit a lot of documents for the authorities because it's all been mapped, and captured. But if he is an individual doing a business himself, like let's say agent under his name, then even though it's not a registered business, he need to comply with it. Yeah, under his own name.
Okay. Yeah, that's definitely something like I see you have a point on that. Okay, and another question also from Surya. She has asked like, how about NGO organization reporting to ROS and where such an organization receives revenue from the rental income? What's your advice, sir?
So as I mentioned just now, generally, even the current tax regime, even your NGO, if you are carrying on a business, the issue is, are you carrying on a business? So when you have either you're carrying on a business, you have income from investment. So you are required to do the tax reporting. So in this case, they are required to issue the e-invoice, even though they are associations or NGO. But if they are not having investment properties or they are not doing a business, they are only more of a membership body or the kind of thing, then the subscription fees and whatnot is not, or even for temple or religious bodies, there's more for religious activities, not a business per se. Then there's no invoicing requirements.
I see. So that means like if let's say like they have a property and also they are receiving rental as an income, do they consider as
okay, there's a little bit gray area there. They can say, no, I only got one property and I'm not doing business. I'm very passive, meaning.
So no business activities is happening.
Then in that case, the person who renting the building, they may raise a self-raised invoice in the name of the association. But if the same organization, assuming they have a badminton court or wedding hall, very active, and they're maintaining the place, and they cannot say that I'm not doing a business because you're doing activity like similar like any other businessman.
Yeah.
That's why I say definition of business is $1 million question.
Yeah, got it. Okay, so we move on to another question from Shiva. He got two questions he has raised. So one
Yes,
is,
please.
foundation which incorporated under CA 2016 need to comply with e-invoicing?
I'm not very sure about this legislation, but I would rather say you can be registered in any form of the legislation. The issue is, are you doing a business?
Yeah, if there is any
Then,
income
yes,
generated from
then
foundation or from any association, then
full
obviously
stop,
you have to
full
declare.
stop. You have to comply with it unless you're exempted under the exempted person, which I believe is not in that list.
Yeah,
Royal, so
only the
if you're
royal,
not,
yes, that's why I see like in the list also, it's only for the royal families.
yeah, or even any other body, if you're not exempted, then you need to comply with whichever legislation you are governed by.
Yeah, totally got that. And the second question, how for a e-commerce, the e-invoicing will be applicable?
So these e-invoice platforms, normally they're intermediary between the buyer and seller, you see.
Mhm.
So the buyer is, maybe they're buying from them, where normally nowadays they issue the immediate receipt. So the seller side, let's say somebody want to sell a swimming badminton racket, and they put it in the portal, I'm going to sell this. And the buyer paid to the e-commerce portal, and the transactions happens that way, you see. So in these situations, obviously the seller side could be just one sale for him. He's not doing a business, you see. Whereas the buyer is the customers of the e-commerce platform. That's where the self-based invoice comes in for the e-commerce. And now the seller, which is only selling a badminton record, he may need to put his TIN number there and IC numbers and identification number in order for you to sell in the platform.
Okay, so is that, yeah, even I have the same question what Shiva has. Like most of the time as a seller, there are many of our, even our ladies who are selling products in TikTok shop and also like in Shopee and Lazada. So do they need to also have an e-invoicing portal to manage whatever transaction that they have made in any of the marketplace?
Are they doing business?
Yes.
Then that's about it. They have to comply with it
Okay.
in whichever
So
platform you're doing.
whichever platform, it can be physically or it can be through online platform, whether you are making a small business or big business, you still need to comply with e-invoicing.
That's why, as I said, the million-dollar question is, are you doing business?
Okay. So I think like doing business is one thing, but managing the digital transaction operation is going to actually give a real headache to all the startups and also those who are already doing business, but they have a very limited financial knowledge. Because you
Yeah,
see, like in our cases, our Indian businesses, they seldom even declare their transactions even at current point of time. So is that going to applicable for them to strictly follow this e-invoicing portal is a million-dollar question for me personally.
yeah. If you look at it, if they are floating their product to the e-commerce platform itself, like I think they have for this Carousel, or even, there are many other platforms, Muda.com and so on. That is different because the platform may handle certain part of it. But if they're selling the same thing to their Facebook or Instagram kind of things, more like those platforms are going to handle your transactions. So they need to have their own system to manage this invoicing, or they can use the income tax portal to record this transaction to the, their which is free. It's free, provided free actually, but it just depends on the number of transactions only. Yeah.
Okay, got it, sir. It looks like there are quite a lot of things that we need to digest
Yeah.
by another couple of months. Okay.
Uh,
Okay, so I also got another question over here. How about TikTok affiliate coach? Okay, how about TikTok affiliate? Please explain. Someone has asked this question to me.
Frankly speaking, I'm well versed with these terms in the
Affiliate
TikTok
also,
affiliates.
you see, like for affiliate, okay, let me explain how the affiliate works. I don't have my own product, but I do videos in TikTok, and then someone is selling the product. It's like I'm getting commission out of it. That means like I'm receiving commission.
So
Is
you're
that
receiving,
right
yeah, okay. Now that you're receiving commission from whom?
From the TikTok platform, but obviously from the product that has been sold from another person's product. I mean, like a seller upload a product in an e-commerce platform, which is a TikTok, and then I have a lot of followers, and then I do a video, and then I help to sell the product, and I get a commission. That is affiliate program all about.
Okay, fine.
So now I'm receiving some income through this activity. I need to declare e-invoicing, or I need to use the e-invoicing portal to declare all my my income.
So if you're so okay, fine. If you're so active, and that is your only activity, then you may regard as doing a business. You may need to raise an e-invoice. Otherwise, the person who float their product into the TikTok, who's actually their product, yes, you assist them to sell. They supposed to raise a self-raised invoice self-bill invoice in the name of the affiliates. It's a similar like the agent helped to sell the houses for the developer. Same thing, the developer call the agents and say, I got 100 houses to sell. Yes, it's a similar to that. And the developer will raise a self-raised invoice in the name of the agent. We call property agent. Here, whatever floating the product, where the affiliates help them to make it famous or sell, and any commission paid, which is income for the affiliates and expense for the seller.
And expense for the seller, correct?
Yes. So they have to do the self-raised invoice in the name of the affiliates, and obviously by doing so, it's already mapped in the income tax that so and so have earned such an income, and they have to report end of the year in their tax return.
Okay. So because we do have like a digital tax, which need to be paid whenever that we are getting commission from the digital platform, right? So I think like there will be a mapping happens from our personal tax, obviously, like how you say, like when the seller makes the declare the
self-raised invoice, in the name of the
and then obviously like that will be recorded. Okay. I think like it's quite clear now. Yeah, I hope like Mogra get the question clear to you. Okay, I have a very long question from Umeshwaran. For enterprise companies, usually the tax paid is connected with their individual tax.
Yes.
So in this case, the e-invoicing for the enterprise businesses are connected to their personal income tax, is it? If yes, must the tax to be paid on a monthly or yearly basis? Right now, we have CP 204 and CP 500 payments. Will those payments still be applicable once this e-invoicing is introduced? If I'm not mistaken, the CP 204 and CP 500, is that the fund that you really you receive from one of your funding that you have raised? Umeshwaran, can you please be more clear about it? What is CP 204?
No, okay, never mind. I think I can take on that. No worry. I know the numbers we are talking about, 204 and 500. Okay. So CP 204 and 500, came in when they call when there's a self-declaration. The earlier was official assessment, then it come the what we call self-declaration of our own income, from the year 2000, and that's where the government collect the taxes in advance through installment.
Oh, the PCB, No,
PCB, it's also kind of collecting in advance. Yes, all came in after this what we call self-declaration of the income taxes, unlike last time, you see. So the CP 204 is actually for the companies, applicable to the companies, and CP 500 for the sole proprietors, we call enterprise sometimes. And CP 204 is actually 12 installments, while the CP 500, if I know, it's 6 installments issued by the Inland Revenue Board based on the past income, and you are required to pay. CP 204, that company has to file themselves in advance, whereas the CP 500 normally will be issued by the income tax in the installments in advance, actually, and that is what they have to pay for the year. That years, like for example, 2024, you'll be paying the 6th installment, and end of in 25 you report for the 24, and whatever the difference only need to pay. That's so the CP 500 or CP 204 for company, and PCB, as you mentioned just now, is all advanced tax collected by the government during that year itself. And when they submit the actual tax later, you deduct the amount being paid, and you need to pay the balance, or if there's insufficient, you pay the difference. And this got nothing to do with e-invoicing to start with.
Yes, that's why I was been puzzling too why the taxation comes in, because it's more into the digital transaction declaration.
It's a commercial transactions, yes. It's a mere commercial matter, nothing to do with the taxes per se.
Yeah, okay. So I got that. And also I'm also still getting a few questions directly to me. Okay. Harjit asks, I'm selling a pisang goreng pisang. How to do the e-invoicing? So this is more into a cottage industries, like those who are caterers, home-based caterers. But I also hear you say even you're doing something from home-based, the moment you start selling to people, you are generating income, then the e-invoicing comes into the picture.
Yeah. As I think that recently there's one video went viral by one of the member, saying that how the small business is going to manage this.
Survive and manage, and
yes.
also there are many we say one person running everything.
Yes,
Right?
yes.
So we have this so-called a one-man show businesses in Malaysia quite a lot, right? And how are they going to actually manage this e-invoicing while they are performing their businesses, and also while they are also managing their sales, marketing, logistic, customer service, and this is going to be an additional, work for them to do. So, what is your thought process on that, sir? How are they managed?
I completely agree with that. Yes, it is going to, as I said, the life is not going to be the same. As I mentioned just now, life is not going to be the same. That exactly happened during the COVID. Life is not going to be the same. Whoever didn't buy the smartphone, they have to buy the smartphone. Whoever never download the app has to download the app and have to queue and scan the code. It happened actually, correct or not? And like it or not. And in fact, the adoption into even this kind of virtual portals, virtual meetings become accelerated. So moving to e-invoice, yeah, it's going to be a challenge for the, as I say, micro and small businesses, whether they are fishmongers or vegetable sellers or curry puff selling, and kind of thing. But I think by then, the day the income tax released a press statement saying that the 1st July remain even for the micro businesses, they are not going to give any exemptions. And by the time they may have some tool, maybe mobile applications kind of thing, they can use it to record the transactions. Nowadays, I think it's not uncommon for even those who are selling a curry puff to have a smartphone in their hand. So as long as they have a smartphone in their hand, I believe this application will be able to assist them to record these transactions as a way to move forward by July.
Okay, I hope maybe IRB could be also interconnected with the e-wallet, because most of the time, I can hear how Harjit says, whenever that we are selling a pisang goreng, it's not easy for every transaction. They do an invoicing for it. So now currently, we already have in practice with the cashless payment, where the seller or the merchant can get the buyer to buy through e-wallet. So which every single transaction has been documented. Maybe they could able to declare that particular day, the income in the e-invoicing, and also the expenses in terms of buying the raw materials for it from the shops and all that can be declared. Because I'm just looking into, in the reality point of view, I can hear what Harjit says.
No, I completely, agree with that. It is, but e-wallet mainly for the banking transactions. If they can do the mapping well and good, as I mentioned just now, yeah, one thing I didn't really emphasize on it. Even you have a consolidated invoices with the receipt numbers. If anyone requests for the e-invoices, they're required to issue the e-invoice. Even this Machi who's selling the curry puff, if she sell this curry puff, 300 curry puff to an organization doing a lunch, for example, a dinner, and they ask for the e-invoice, she has to provide.
Yeah, that is
So
okay. But when they are selling like 2 ringgit curry puff, 3 ringgit curry puff in a loose, and how are they going to actually document this invoicing is something like even puzzling me also. Maybe they may come up with any easy
no,
solution.
simple, probably a simple solution with just with the 3 tap would be sufficient to capture the transactions. We have to wait and see, whether
Yeah. So
the
they haven't come up
application,
with any solid solution so that the petty traders can able to actually have a
yes,
better idea about it. So when we are talking about e-invoicing and also like the other terminologies for organization like us, when we are dealing with the current things, even I'm having my own e-invoicing portal, but it's like a third party one that we are maintaining because we still need that to actually document all our expenses to be submitted for the accounts or auditing for the year.
yes.
But the main focal point, what I'm seeing, like from today's conversation, is mainly those people from organizations, associations, NGOs, and also like the small businesses. Even I'm hearing like one more message from Hema. She said like she's also an affiliate. She's also a TikTok seller, and she's having a 2 different TikTok account. How am I now going to actually deal with this thing, right? So there are many questions has been raised by the small businesses, and also I'm seeing like another thing here from Vilashini, a beauty spa owner, and also a makeup artist. So my business is more on the services providing side. How does the e-invoice can be implemented in my business? So like a makeup artist, they are going over like for a bridal makeup per se. So they might be receiving maybe the advance payment first in order for them to lock the job. And by the time they finish the work, maybe on the wedding day, they finish the job and then they might be getting the payment maybe in a couple of days or whatever. So how the e-invoicing system works for them? It's also another puzzling questions from her.
I completely agree that when it comes to micro and small businesses, they're going to have a challenge to adapt to the new reporting regime, and more so those who are doing very unstructured business, and they just collect the cash, as you just now. Those who are doing a bridal, for example, where they have every weekend appointment, and how they're going to manage it. Obviously, if you're receiving advances, that is not required to do issue invoice, but upon completion of the services, yes. But again,
okay, I got it now. So upon completion of the job and then you receive the full amount, then you still have to declare your receivable.
Because you go back to the fundamental question, are you doing business?
Okay.
If you do
So
it for
I
the
hope
family
like
members
Emma,
and whatnot.
Vilashini, Harjit, Morgana, whoever asks questions as part of a small businesses and also like a home-based businesses, please do take note. You still have to declare since you are receiving money for your services.
Yeah, I mean, particularly, are you doing business?
Okay, I have another hot questions from Surya. I need to see her because she has been asked many questions.
Okay.
Surya asked, is this e-invoicing going to be another Padu where unwelcome by public? It's a very sensitive question. Maybe you can take up the question well, sir.
No, anyway, it's nothing to do with the public. It's everything to do with business people only. So I don't think so. An issue with the public.
So
it's more like a business process.
On behalf of the public and also being a business owner, we are part of the public. So that could be
because it doesn't really impact the general public per se. It's more like a business processes. So it's an enhancement of a business process to one more level. That's how we look at it. You see.
Okay, so I also getting another question over here. How this is from Tenmoli, how we can start it with e-invoicing and what software or platform are recommended for e-invoicing. I got someone is started thinking, how can I get started? So bravo, Tenmoli. So, sir, do you have any answer for that?
Uh, at the moment, many of these softwares, accounting softwares, they are still doing the testing in the sandbox environment, which already was live from May this year. And we will have a clearer picture from I think, before the August, when they open up to the public. And of course, larger organization using ERP system with the SAP or Oracle and whatnot, they already, they gone voluntarily implementing the e-invoicing and testing it through the test environment now. So I think not only these software providers, inland revenue also doing their best to ensure.
That's what I thought, like IRB has to come out with your IRB system so that all the small businesses no need to invest on third-party applications for them to actually declare. It's supposed to be like that, right?
Yes, because those, when you say small businesses, assuming they're all below 25 million threshold, and
Yes.
they are required to comply from 1st July next year. So there is still a breathing space for them, and wait and see. By then, I think this will be much clearer.
Yeah, because August is mainly for the 100 million sales turnover companies.
Yes,
that means
yes.
like the larger companies has to implement it immediately. And I feel like when this e-invoicing implemented in August, even all the small companies has to comply for it because it's like something like give and take, right? So the bigger businesses are looking for e-invoicing. Definitely, they might be looking for the proof of invoicing in the same mode for them to actually comply for their hand. Could be,
No,
right?
I think that's the misconception is now.
Okay.
So even your customer, if you're a supplier and your customers need to comply with e-invoicing in August, for example, you are supplying to Petronas, for example, and Petronas already in e-invoice regime from 1st August.
Supply from August. Yes.
Yes, and you are just doing on catering of food for their lunch, for example, and your threshold of turnover below, obviously 100 million,
5 million,
yes. Yes. So you are not required to issue e-invoice to them. So your current practice is well and good until the 1st July.
Okay. So it's only on the one side, not on the second side.
Yes.
There could be a supplier or could be someone is actually handling with this, the large companies.
Yeah, it's not a back-to-back. That you also must be comply with. If your customer is e-invoice compliant, you must comply. No such thing.
Okay.
Until 1st July next year. Until 1st July next year. Thereafter, yes, because all.
Okay. So, so it's 9:24. Let's go with two more questions. I'm sorry, like we have been getting a lot of questions.
Okay.
So, I think like one common questions over here. How about the investment revenues, sir?
Investment revenue, meaning because
But it's an income, so it's an income, right? So
no, depend whether your investments are passive or
individual.
active. No, let's say if you are renting you have a property, for example, and you're
I'm
not
saying it mostly investment could be the passive revenues, something from like investment, and someone asked like individual involved in crypto and also like a share market. I think it's a common question.
So if
Passive income.
Yeah, if it's it depends if your investment itself, you're not conducting a business. Let's say you're buying and selling a shares and whatnot. I believe that buying and selling will be handled by
it's very much individuals who are focusing about how to declare their income. So I think like people are still in confusion. Is it declaring their income and also e-invoicing is the same?
No. You see, e-invoicing is for those who are doing the business. You see, you may have income, it's a capital gain, you sold the house, you got the income, and that doesn't come on the e-invoicing. Of course, when the developer sell you the house, there's a e-invoicing. But later you sell the same house to someone else, it could be income for you. But at this junction, as I say, there's a B to B, B to G, and B to C. There's no C to C.
Okay. C2C. So I think like most of the people are talking about C2C, and also they are focusing so much on the income, not on the entire business operation.
So C to C yet to come, but you come eventually.
Very soon.
Yes, after this is stabilized.
Okay. Yeah. So and also like one last question: post system, is it can or for retail sales clothing?
Yeah, POS systems now widely used in the retail as well as F&B sectors. If they're using a conventional POS system, it's going to be a challenge because that receipt cannot be uploaded to cannot be consolidated to start date.
Even the accounting software now, most of the POS system is integrated with accounting software, where you can also do your,
Consolidated invoices and uploading
yes,
it in the month end. Yes. So this POS system will be by then will be e-invoice compliant, and yes, just
to be
mention.
integrated.
Yeah, but I mentioned about the integration of case. They allow if you have multiple POS system, let's say you have a branch, you have outlets at different location having a POS systems. You can upload from that POS system directly. Need not to be single reporting.
Yeah.
From the post to the My Invoice portal through the same TIN number of the taxpayer. So need not to be under the synchronized under the single system actually. So if you have 5 branches, each branch can do their own reporting.
Yeah. Okay. So I see like one more question. The last question. Let us take the last question. So
yes, please.
I don't want to actually hold you longer. One important question from Sendil Kumar Palniappan: if adopt e-invoicing on voluntary basis, can I emphasize my supplier who is in category of 25 million below who is not implemented e-invoicing to issue an e-invoice?
Sorry, you're talking about.
Okay, can I emphasize one important question? If I adopt e-invoicing on voluntary basis,
okay.
Can I emphasize my supplier to issue e-invoice and falls under category of 25 million below who is not implemented e-invoicing? So he asked whether can I emphasize.
You can talk to them, but you cannot force them to comply with it. Yes, because the law doesn't require them to comply with it until the 1st July.
1st July 2025, you still can, if you are voluntarily doing it, it's on you, but you can't force anyone.
You cannot put into their as a requirement to them. And after July, if they don't issue your e-invoice,
then you can report about it.
Yeah, you can choose not to do business with them anymore already because you can't claim the expenses.
Okay. So it's not about even putting that into the practice itself.
Yeah, you can buy from the supplier who's complying with it, not from them because you can't claim the expenses.
Very, very clear. And it's going to be like a real trouble things like everyone need to comply.
So the like it or not, they have to comply with it. Let's say there's transporter have 5 lorries or 3 lorries, and he's just providing this service to the multinational. So, or transporting their goods. So it's perfectly okay now. Moving from July next year, if we don't comply with the e-invoice, all those companies going to stop buying their services, acquire their services. So, and too bad about it. And that's where the challenge is. So even though he's doing the simple businesses now, we're having drivers, 5 drivers, 5 lorries. Now life is, you're just raising some simple manual invoices and the company accepting it because they know that he has provided the services. But from July onwards next year, even though same thing is delivering and providing the services, they may stop acquire the services if he failed to issue invoice to them because they can't claim. And it's a B2B.
Totally understand. So I'm also hearing people say like it's scary, like how we are facing COVID. I think we're also going to face the e-invoicing transformation. So the evaluation, the revolution, the financial revolution in Malaysia is really is going
Yeah,
to hit.
definitely. Yeah, the impact is very great on the way people do business and capturing informations and sharing informations. It's not going to be the same. So that's the reason why I believe even they are required to comply from 1st July, time is running out. They should
Okay.
give a
Yes.
very importance to this. Yeah.
So, just to conclude this, sir, I feel like in most cases, Malaysia is not the only country that is going to actually implement e-invoice, but this is already a global practice.
I won't
So,
say global, yeah, 20 over countries, but more and more countries are adopting it,
adapting
sooner
it.
or
So
later, yes.
we are one of the pioneer, could be in Asia
Yeah,
and all, but it's definitely going to be a game changer to many, many businesses, mostly those
yes,
smaller businesses. We still have another year to go, more than a year. Actually, now it's only June, and we have another 13 months for
yes,
us to
yes,
explore how this is going to be. If let's say like you are actively doing business and you're receiving income and also you're paying your suppliers, you are declaring your taxes currently. I think it's time for you to also look into how this e-invoicing work and how are you going to get ready yourself in terms of the infrastructure, in terms of the people who are going to actually help you. That means like it could be a skillful person who's within your organization, or are you going to actually get someone to help you out
yes,
who have this experience, right? So rather
yes.
than we are opposing or we are pretending that we are ignoring it, now it's time for us to collaborate with someone who knows about it and also how get the right advice, because end of the day the survival is real. If we can't go back to the employment again, right? Those who are already
Yeah,
doing businesses, you already earning something, you already have a customer base, then you can't escape with this game, right? So thank you so much for nearly more than 1.5 hours
for
of
us, yeah,
conversation, Mr. Krishnan. Thank you for
thank
all
you.
the input and also your sharing. And to all of you, I feel like we hit nearly about 140. And now we nearly have about 59 people who have been stayed with us until this 1.5 hours during the Q&A section, because the topic is something very, very serious and it needs to be spoken a lot more frequently. I hope like we can have something similar or a different topic very soon under SIGBA. Thank you so much, SIGBA, the South Indian Congo Business Network, Mr. Palani, for bringing this all together with all of us, and also the organizing team. And to Mr. N.K. Krishnan and the team who have been tirelessly working for past few days on getting the Zoom link sent out to all the participants. Suddenly, yesterday, we got overwhelmed responses after the video has been uploaded in TikTok of Go Digital Production. So thank you so much, everyone, who have been there with us. And we will be sharing this recording session in a day of 2 or 3 days. We'll be upload in Sigba's official YouTube page. We will also share that in the WhatsApp group that all of you are there. And please do stay in our WhatsApp group because we will be sharing more upcoming program informations over there, right? So stay tuned and stay updated so that we can sustain ourselves in this business. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And good
Thank
evening,
you.
everyone. Have a nice day ahead.
Thank you, Bhavna. Thank you to everyone. Thank you to SIGBA. Yeah. So let's prepare ourselves from now itself and,